Hi everyone, welcome to Animprop. Now everyone knows what Sword Art Online is, so I'll skip the introduction today. Just as I'm diving straight into this video, Sword Art Online Alicization War for the Underworld Part 2 wasted no time in jumping straight into the tentacle bondage. Within the first 5 minutes, we have Leafa here being undressed and attacked by tentacles. I like how self-aware SAO is. It was heavily criticized for its tentacle scenes in the past, and here we see it doubling down on this type of content. This is a large middle finger to all the critics. The director here is making it as clear as possible in the first few minutes of this anime that this anime is for the fans and not the critics, as it should be. What can also be taken from the tentacle action is how good the animation is. It seems to be constantly improving. An astute animation observer will notice that over time the animation style of SAO has shifted from hard borders and outlines for moving characters to very soft outlines. The latest animation seems to have no outlines, and the characters feel alive as they move with new levels of fluidity. Hard lines are now used for emphasis in the animation, particularly with the action sequences. Now, I'm going to get deep and philosophical because what I'm about to talk about requires it. Spoilers for War of Underworld Part 2 ahead, so dip out now if you haven't watched it yet. I'll give you a moment. Alright, so Kirito has always been a one-dimensional character, the embodiment of a power fantasy harem hero lead. In Alicization, he sustains an injury which renders him in a vegetative state. In the War of Underworld, the scientists think they can reconstruct Kirito's fluctlight by using the memories of those close to him. Problem is, the only memories they have access to are those of the girls in his harem. Do you see the problem yet? I think this is amazing because essentially they have taken all the things people hate about Kirito, his plot armor, his overpoweredness, and his unconditional attractiveness to all the females, and they've basically refined it. I propose that by using the memories of these girls that are madly in love with him and idolize him to new heights, Kirito is reconstructed as a god in his own image, a more refined version of what he already was perceived as. This to me is another large middle finger to the critics who comment on Kirito's invulnerability as a character. Side note on philosophy, I would just like to make a comment on this Integrity Knight. I don't like him. Bitch Knight Renly. Definitely the bottom of every SAO tier list. Moving on. Another philosophical question which may be posed. The fluctlights in the system are a finite and countable number. The amount of fluctlight isn't reduced when an inhabitant of the underworld dies. Therefore, what is the concept of afterlife here? In episode 2, Berkuli falls, and we see him floating around as a ghost. But there is no further insight into what it means for an artificial fluctlight to die in the underworld. One thing is clear, the fluctlights are born, and therefore new fluctlights are added to the light cube cluster. That must therefore mean that old ones can be deleted after death. So maybe death in the underworld is final for the artificial fluctlight with no afterlife, because their consciousness is tethered to the fluctlight itself. So if that is removed from the light cube cluster, the entity will cease to exist. What I love about this philosophy is that inhabitants of the underworld who have become self-aware start to explore the same questions. Berkuli died in battle, putting Vector to the sword, during the best battle of War of the Underworld Part 2. Alice is heartbroken when she learns that Vector was just an avatar that the wielder was using. She has difficulties rationalizing how Berkuli was killed while the Vector player was just logged out. Another philosophical question that the finale of Sword Art Online raises is how we will handle alternative worlds in the future. Towards the end of the 11 episode run, Kirito is hit with a conflict. He partly doesn't want to leave the Underworld because of the people who he has met there and come to love. What will happen when software developers are able to make a virtual world that is truly comparable to that of our own? There will become every possibility that the life one leads in this virtual world could be more enjoyable than reality. This is further compounded by the fact that the inhabitants of this virtual world are counted as real life living souls, as we have seen with the artificial fluctlight. So, what will be in place to prevent someone from choosing to exist in that alternative world rather than the current one? The arc also gets into the philosophy of the impact being a hero has on the family unit. This is a theme that is covered in detail in other anime, like recently My Hero Academia and the scenes with Deku's mom, but hasn't been covered so much in SAO. I'm happy to say that on the final episode of the season, Kirito's mother and father received significant screen time, where the audience really can see the impacts of Kirito's gallant exploits in the VR world on his real life family. Kirito's mother is shown to be stressed while his father is concerned about his son's future, because even though he is the mighty black swordsman, we have yet to see Kirito read a book or ace a high school test. Another side note, something I've liked since Alicization is the two settings with different but linked plot lines. Usually we switch between the Underworld and the events occurring on the ocean turtle. This reminds me of Code Lyoko, this old French cartoon I loved growing up, where they would show both the school life for the kids and when they logged into Lyoko, and you always had two converging plot lines with reality and inside Lyoko. The anime, I'm talking about Sword Art Online now, didn't shy away from the hard questions. That's not to say it answered them amazingly well, but the ambition is applaudable. I can't recommend this anime generally, but for any SAO fan, this is a must-watch. A very good end to the series with a satisfying narrative conclusion and epilogue, which an epilogue is something that's missing from a lot of modern anime, so I'm very pleased to see that we have one here in SAO. Now that it's over, however, we should note it isn't actually over. SAO is going the route of Naruto with Boruto and Dragon Ball with Dragon Ball Super. This series is too lucrative to end. They're going to reboot Kirito's story with SAO Progressive. This is a remake of the Aincrad arc. This is something I will definitely be watching. Anyways, that's it for today. Like, subscribe, let me know if you want more coverage of SAO progressive content.